am a wife and a mother and an insurance agency owner, a friend, and a PTA advocate. I am so excited to talk about all of the things that I find most precious here within our community, within our lives, and within our faith, friendships, and relationships. Here on Heather's Most Precious. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Heather's Most Precious. I am so excited to be with Liam today.
Hello, Heather. I am so excited to finally be doing this. We've been talking about this for so long.
Right.
So long, so I'm so glad to finally be here.
And it's here.
It sure is.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Liam is the podcast producer and host and star of almost a year.
Almost a year. Yeah,
of Crime Over Wine.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, Heather, I have to get into the good stuff here, right? My mom always told me never to go anywhere without a bottle of wine, and so of course I had to bring out the bottle of wine for the podcast. And so, if you don't mind, we'll sip on this a little bit. Here we go, because that's what we do on Crime Over Wine. But yeah, no, Crime Over Wine is my child, first of all, right? Of course, I mean I care about it so much. But I grew up. Watching the ID channel with mom, like drinking wine with mom, like that was like so much part of my upbringing. And so it makes sense. Like anyone who knows me knows, is like, here's Crime Over Wine, and they're like, that is Liam to a T. But yeah, I started the podcast, like you said, about a year ago, to advocate for people. I am not one who likes to be ignored by any means. Again, anyone who knows me,
it's very true.
Knows that I'm the loudest person in the room almost always. And so I advocate for myself very well, and so I use that as this medium to advocate for other people. And so that's what we do every week on Crime Over Wine.
I love that. And share really interesting stories. Now, you are not the typical crime podcast like everybody else.
Yeah.
You're not just the gore and the wife who, drove her kids into a pond.
Well,
Tell us why, what kind of stories intrigue you and how are you different?
Well, so our tagline is head-scratching true crime stories. And so we do try to, I try to do something a little bit different than what everyone else is doing. But I also, again, do it because one of the reasons why I wanted to start the podcast, so my formal background, I was a local news reporter here in Chattanooga for 2 years in North Carolina before that. And so I would listen to true crime podcasts, and once I would finish my latest one, I would start a new one, and I would get onto these podcasts and listen to these podcasts and just really, there are some of them out there that are insulting, you know what I mean? In terms of just not keeping the victim in mind, not keeping the family members in mind who are still out there.
Right.
And so I really wanted to create a platform where I can, do it and do it right. You know what I mean? Because I'm a very empathetic person, or at least I like to think so. And so I wanted to create this platform where I can share people's stories and constantly keep that in mind. And Michael, who the creator of the Podnuka Network, which we're both part of, said, and I think I recently found out that he still listens to someone's, but I've stolen it from him, to create the podcast that you want to listen to, right? And so I wanted to listen to a new true crime podcast that was actually keeping victims and victims' family members at front of mind. And so that's what I did. I created it because I was like, if nobody else is going to, not nobody else, but if other people aren't going to do it right, then I'm going to be the person who actually does it right. So
I love that. And I love that there are always, not only is it head scratching, but you always have the wine aspect where we're learning something new. I want to change perspectives. I want people to want to grow. We shouldn't always want to stay the same person.
Absolutely.
And I'm someone who doesn't like change, but I don't want to be who I am when I'm 53 years old. Right. I want to have changed and evolved and learned and grow and all of this stuff. And I feel like you allow us to do that as well, and to hear about new either wines that we want to try, or maybe stories that you then want to go investigate and compare and all of that.
Right.
What has been the best part of Crime Over Wine?
Man, the best part. For starters, so when my crime palette, or excuse me, my wine palette, was always, very traditional, right? And so I have really branched out in terms of the wine that I like to drink and the
Thank you.
Oh yes, very much so. And we always do this on Crime Over Wine.
Of course we do. Of course, always.
And so I've been able to branch out. I've been able to try new things and try wines that I never would have even touched or let alone bought before. And so that has really helped a lot too. But of course, the number one thing that I've really attached myself to has been being able to again advocate for people whose voices were quite literally stolen from them. Right. And so you really think about that. It hasn't really sunk into me. It didn't really sink into me until after I really got into the podcast and really started going and was reaching a lot of people. How powerful that is to be able to even if it's a very small, the smallest amount, to be able to share someone's story, advocate on behalf of somebody who can't advocate for themselves, which is again, you don't have to be dead to acknowledge that that's a significant thing, that to have your voice stolen from you, to have your power stolen from you in one way or another, and so that's really fascinating. And so I think a lot about, and again, this was a case very much so that my friend Joseph Fennedy did all the work on and graciously lent over to me so I can share with my listeners. But the Betty Willis case, we covered it multiple times on the podcast.
Yes.
And that is just one of those cases that has just stood out to me, right? Because, and again, go listen to it if you haven't. But to give you the kind of the shorthand version here, it's this woman who just had everything going for her and truly could have been
the epitome of good, right?
The epitome of good, but and could have been the next Aretha Franklin, had this beautiful voice, and had it stolen from her, in one way. And again, listen to the episode. In one way or another, her life kind of takes a left turn, and long story short, she ends up dead on the streets of Santa Ana, California, and 5 years later, her killer was caught in the act, and still hadn't been convicted for it. And so, I got involved before he's since been convicted, but I got involved before he was even convicted. And again, that's really kind of when it hit me, when I was I'm doing something, and moving the needle on things.
Right. You're making a difference.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's what it's all about, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what it has to be all about. Otherwise, what's the point? So.
And how rewarding that is when you know that you're making a difference. So often people want to do good and they want to do the right thing and their intentions are good, but you rarely get to see the good or feel the good, because at the end of the day, there's work, there's stresses, all of this that kind of shadows those feelings sometimes. Or the negativity that, shadows the one negative voice, right? We've talked about that kind of shadows everything. And so how rewarding, and especially in this case. To have been an aid in bringing her killer to justice.
Well, and who's to say if we never got involved with that, he never would have went to trial and never would have gotten convicted.
He wouldn't have. It's all you.
But it's nice to think, and again, her family who's still alive, very much so believes that we got involved and we moved the needle on it, because they've said it to me. And so that's that, even if it wasn't true, even if Crime Over Wine never existed, everything would have happened the exact same way. The fact that the family members feel like their voices are being heard, that's the important thing.
They were acknowledged and valued and seen, right? And that's a big deal. Are any of the families, I know that is a specific family that you did touch base with and you were able to communicate with, do you still communicate with them or with people that have been apart?
Yeah, so we actually, just this past Monday, we dropped an episode with Betty's daughter, it was a conversation with myself, Joseph Fennedy, and Stephanie Walker, which was, delightful. That was I gained chills just thinking about, about being able to do that. But yeah, as local news reporter, there were several cases that I covered, that I, have since covered on Crime Over Wine. And so, I am constantly trying to make sure that, I got the most updated information. Hey, is there anything like, can we share this in any other way, shape or form? Like you have to, because again, like that's the whole point, like for me anyways, right? Like the whole point is to get that out there. And it's not, because again, like so many of these podcasts are all about like the gory and the entertainment. And it's like, that's the whole point. And there are like those crazy moments in the case that are just funny, you know what I mean? And nothing about what we talk about is funny, you know what I mean? Like nothing that we discuss is supposed to be entertaining for you. It's supposed to make you feel like you want to do something about it.
Right.
And so that's what we try to do. And so you have to bring the family members along in order to do that. That's how I feel.
That's good. Yeah. And what I like is that you are intentionally telling the story and the perspective of the family, the truths, right, that you have been able to discover in order to shed light on it and encourage people to take action, right?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Oh, it sure is. Yeah. And again, so we always try to, I try to cover more unsolved cases on the podcast, right? Because I firmly believe that those are by and far the much more important cases to talk about. Not to say that the solved cases aren't important to talk about, but the unsolved cases, there's power there, right? To be able to, because at the end of the day, like, we're all, chugging along in our lives, right? Like we've got bills to pay. We've got to do this. We have to pick up the kids after school. Like we're all living our lives. And so it's so easy to, and we've seen it time and time again, to just gloss over things that just didn't sit right with you. Right. And so the power of podcasts, I think so anyways, is you can listen to them while you're doing anything, right? And so, so the busy, those kind of people who are just constantly trying to just get to the next thing can listen to this, and maybe there's that thing that struck you, driving on Lee Highway in Chattanooga, a couple years ago, that you're like, oh, like you're right. Like actually, I was there. Like I saw like that car that like was a little out of place,
right?
And to be able to call in and do something, and so that's why on the unsolved cases we always end the episode with it. Hey, if you know anything, you have to like, here's the number, here's how you call. You can visit this link. You can sign this petition if there was an injustice done. We try to link to that in our show notes too, because that's again, it's all about trying to encourage people to actually to give people a reason to get invested in these cases. That's how I feel about it.
And that becomes a crucial piece then, if you're encouraging people to come forward that may know something.
Right.
Because memory is funny, isn't it? Like there is you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how often are we silent? Or how often are we unaware? Just because we're either chaotic with our schedules.
Life is crazy, right? Yeah.
And we can understand that, but when you take the time to sit down and intentionally share, that does allow them the opportunity to remember and to come forward, and that's a big deal.
Well, and two, like I always say, like even if it's just sharing the episode to your friends,
right?
That's doing work. That's getting involved and that's getting invested.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're talking about unsolved cases. Some of them have been solved, but a lot of the cold cases, how often do you think, or maybe you've seen, and this could just be how I think, that there are the power in solving the cold cases, most of the time, that is not a singular event or occurrence. Am I correct in thinking that? Yeah. Or is that something that you think these are just kind of, offhanded one-time events?
The ones that aren't solved?
Correct.
Oh, no, there are so many unsolved cases out there, again, that need your attention, like, right at this very second, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, the one of the ways that I find cold cases is almost every agency, like, lists them on their website, frankly, because that's how they get tips is, hey, look in our cold cases, see if anyone looks familiar, kind of thing, see if anything rings a bell, and so that's a critical piece is just exposing people to them, exposing as many people as possible to them, because again, like I've seen cases be solved by less than just someone who noticed like that car that wasn't in the right space, like someone who thought something was so insignificant but turned out to be like the piece that they were looking for to solve this thing.
Yeah.
So
that's crucial.
Is that what you were looking for?
So how often do you think that a cold case is not the person who was at large, right, who has not been found, right? How often do you think
accused? Is that what you're asking?
No. How often do you think that this cold case may be related to something else, like this killer is doing more than just this
interesting
thing?
You know, it's so funny you said that. So I because I was just listening to an episode actually, and this has nothing to do with Crime Over Wine except the fact that it's crime, but about, you know, how there was a killer who you know went and I was just listening to the thing, and I realized that they were talking about the exact same bar and location as a case that I was researching.
What?
And I was like, what? And it was like 20 years earlier, or like maybe even 30 years earlier than the case I was looking at. But I was like, that is. Think about that. Like, think about that for a second. Like, two people went vanished from the same bar. Like, oh my gosh.
That has to connect, right?
In some way, right? Like, if it was somebody's brother, and like, if I remember correctly, like the person who the case I was researching, the person who was found to be responsible for that crime wasn't even like born during this time. So like, there was no like direct connection, but like, but
just how coincidental.
How coincidental, right? And like, and police like think about that too. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because if you if they know that like crimes tend to be committed in this part of the area, then you know that helps them. You know, if they know that the crimes committed here, if they have lived experience investigating a crime here, that's important. So to your point, you know, crime world is very small, and there are so many. Opportunities where it's just like I always say, I don't believe in coincidences a whole lot. I definitely don't believe in coincidences when it comes to homicide investigations.
Right.
And so there are a lot of times, and again, if you listen to any true crime podcast, let alone Crime Over Wine, you'll start hearing it and go, that's a little too convenient, you know? And so going to your point about, you know, could this person be responsible, this person be responsible in the same crime? There are, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, unfortunately. But like there are absolutely those situations where it's just that is just too much of a coincidence, too convenient for me to just be able to write off.
Are police looking at cases? When you say that they compare and they look, are they only looking at things within their own territory and realm, or are they? Okay, so they are not going cross-state, cross-country typically.
Well, and you know what I've noticed, and it's unfortunate, but also makes sense if you really think about it. It really depends on the department, right? Like, you know, bigger departments in New York City, that kind of thing, right? Like they have the resources to be able to exchange.
Yeah.
But if you think about like Athens, Tennessee, no offense to anyone listening from Athens, Tennessee, but like super
we
small.
love you.
We love you. But like super small department, and it's just easier,
it would be
cheaper, borderline impossible to be able to communicate. And then there are some, I've just noticed that some departments that just don't want to. I mean, frankly,
they're apathetic.
They're apathetic, and they don't want to. You know, they have this mindset of, I'm going to take the lead of this thing. I'm going to use this thing. I'm going to ignore the possibility of being able to connect to a much larger agency because this is my town. And I've seen it time and time again. And a lot of times, like there was one case. I don't necessarily know if this is the truth, but it seemed as though like all directions were pointing this direction. It was the Tammy Zawicki case. It was we did it on episode 16, I believe. What a crazy case, right? I mean, that one was wild. And so that one crossed state lines, though, and it was several days before they really made the connection between the thing.
Right.
And it very much so gave that. The people who found Tammy's body in Missouri weren't like, you know, once they realized that this was a case from a different jurisdiction, kind of said, okay, well, that's
wash
it.
their hands of that,
pretty much, and that was like the end of their involvement in the investigation. And possibly could have missed a very critical evidence, which is frustrating, right? I mean, obviously, right? Like a young girl was murdered. A girl about my age was murdered, and you're not going to do a thorough investigation just because the case belonged to some agency in Illinois. And again, I don't know if that was the case, but it seemed like that was the case. And so
almost as if they're being stingy with their resources, that it wouldn't be a benefit.
Absolutely. absolutely. Yeah, and I see that a lot with smaller towns. I see that a lot where it's just we know we know the thing, and if some big city is going to get involved, we're not interested. And so that's unfortunate. And there are numerous examples of that and if you really think about it too, it makes a little bit of sense because think about every like I come from a large family of police officers.
Do you?
Think
Okay.
about police officers.
Yeah.
Like if you know any police officers, like they're pretty, tough, hard-headed, they have something to prove to a certain extent, you know what I mean? And so it does kind of make a little bit of sense if you think about like the personality of a typical police officer. And again, not stereotyping in any way. Like, listen, we have to, like, we love our police officers.
Of course.
But if you think about the type of personality, it makes sense that they would want to kind of hold it to their own, So
and because they're not very trusting.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
They want to make sure that they're keeping it in house, and I get that to an extent. How long typically, just in your experience, I know that Liam's not a police officer, so don't get me for this, but you've had years of experience in this. How often or how long does a cold case stay open before they just basically toss it to the side unless a lead comes in?
I don't know if there's like a magic, and again, it depends on the department, surely.
Of course.
But I don't know if there's like a magic number, but I mean, there's a certain, there are a lot of cold cases that I've covered on the podcast, and you can tell, like, for example, we did Sherry Alfino on my podcast. I believe that was episode 7 or something like that. On Crime.
How you know the numbers? You have so many episodes out. How you know the numbers?
I know.
I'm like looking to the side because I'm like, what? No, like, where did I see the name? And
But yes,
oh my goodness.
But that happened in one of my in the area I grew up in, and you can tell from like that case. I think it was back in like the 80s. I want to say, if I remember correctly. Like the investigators who are assigned to this case even today are dedicated to it even to this moment. Which, like, I'm sure they've cycled through many at this point. But then there are a lot where you can tell maybe not even a year goes by without a lead.
Right. And it just seems to be pushed to the side.
And they're like, okay, we're good.
So it's probably dependent. Obviously, there's probably a lot of moving pieces that are involved in the decision to put a case aside.
Yeah. And to their credit too, right? Like, it's like an investigator who's done hundreds of homicide investigations before can kind of feel out and know, am I likely to get this one solved without this critical call that I'm waiting on?
Right.
Am I likely to get this one solved? Probably not. And so let me focus my energy on cases that I'm much more likely to solve.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense. And,
sure
and back to talking about, us wanting to grow and change your perspectives and all of that, as we think about, you just mentioned the homicide officer that can feel out a case, right? They know what to look for because they've been here before, and most murders are pretty similar. They may have different weapons, they may have a different location, but there are typical similar motives, right? And there are similar, a lot of similarities. Oh my golly, it's late. In the way that these happen, right? Crime typically follows a pattern, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, of course, if they have years of experience, which again is why it is so important to consistently want to grow, because of course if that homicide officer doesn't shape himself by not only experiences and take that knowledge and allow it to change, I doubt he walked into that, or she walked into that and knew right off the bat how to solve. It was probably so much harder in the beginning because that's something that you learn from experience and not a textbook, or with a degree or anything like that. And so I think that also proves that going, or even you, when you started reporting, right? How much easier is it now? You know what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
You know how to have conversations with people too.
Absolutely. And what's funny is when you said that, we're talking about humans, right? Like my therapist once told me, humans are so much more cyclical and behavior driven than we even think, right? Like, think about the patterns of behavior that we all have. Like, even if you don't like to think about yourself as a patterned person, like, you have patterns.
Of course.
And so certainly, like criminal behavior, same thing, right? Like, you can almost, like, there are a lot of investigators who can almost say with 99% certainty that once this person committed this crime here, they went this way because the road went this way, and so like, they probably didn't take a right turn here. They probably made a left turn because of the way that the road bent. Right. Because that's the way human behavior.
Right.
I mean,
but even
that's
psychologically, right? That, I mean, a lot of that plays into it.
Yeah.
It's like the baseball coach that can watch and read a book and know what pitch was thrown by the way the wind blew. I mean, it's amazing the way it sounded when it hit the glove, and that is the experience, right? That you bring with you, that you allow to make you better, right? Or bitter in one sense, but I think those are the opportunities. And we're talking about patterns. My pattern is perfection, because I'm pretty close to perfect. So always, yes, this is why we're friends, and we always need friends to lift us up. What part? I know that this is your podcast, so I want to talk about kind of what you do day to day, and how that also helps shape the podcast, and then helps play into that. So again, my background was local news reporting. For 5 years or so. I was a local news reporter, and so my part of my rhythm was I would come home, and I would open a bottle of wine and turn on my true crime documentary or listen to my favorite true crime podcast. I know, and I was sitting at patterns,
patterns. So true. And I was sitting at home, and I was like, you know what? I can't be the only one doing this, right? And so point being is I still very much do that today, to be fair, right? Because like now the only thing I'm doing extra is like taking notes and writing a script out of what I'm already doing anyways, right? And so point being is so today, I mean, what my day-to-day consists of is simply trying to make contact with those people. I was sitting in your parking lot, and I was writing family members to see if anyone would be interested in speaking with me, because again, that's the most important thing to me, is making sure that their voices are heard, and if they want to talk to me and want to feel like that would be beneficial to the case, or to them even, to cathartic, whatever. To be able to talk about this on a podcast, then I want to give them the platform to be able to do that. And if they don't, then that's cool. I'm still going to cover your family, your loved one's case anyways.
And you've given them a heads up.
Absolutely.
And given them the opportunity, which is huge. And I think too, you mentioned this a little bit, but giving them closure. You're never going to fully, I don't think even when a case is, you're never going to fully have closure when someone is taken from you so abruptly. And in such a lot of these are devastating and brutal. Yeah, absolutely. And no one anticipates that.
Right. No,
their sister, their mom, their daughter, their, whatever. And uncle and boyfriend and brother, because I said all. But I just think you're never anticipate that. Everyone, I know there are a lot of people that think very negatively. I'm not one of them. So my 97.3% positivity, and would be like, oh my gosh, nobody would ever do that. Like, no. And of course, and this is why I don't do true crime, because I would cry every day. It would not be very fulfilling for me. But you are helping to bring that closure piece to them, and once again, allowing them the platform to ask for help, to share how they feel. Because I think too, hearing that stuff can also allow us, being naturally empathetic, we don't know what it's like to not be, but for someone that's not, maybe that opens their eyes to, oh wow, I would have automatically thought this. Maybe that helps change perspective. Maybe that helps soften them for their next encounter with someone that they can maybe communicate in a better way, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you really think about it, right, like you're never going to know 100% what it feels like to be in another person's shoes, but you can hear that person. Oh yeah. You can hear what it's like to be in that person's shoes, and
kind of sense it or imagine, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and or at least understand it, right? And like that's kind of I feel like that's when we grow, right? That's when we become bigger and better people, when we understand each other's lived experiences, and again, not to say that I'm, the expert in that by any means, right? But like, I know that has to be true,
right?
Is once you understand what it's like to be another person, and live through the things that they've lived through, or at least be able to comprehend it. You have to be a kinder, more encouraging, embracing person. You have to be. So,
and I think you kind of hit something there. So I do think that, as you said, they become more accepting. And I think when people, once again, it's that perspective. It can change your mind. Maybe you had a preconceived notion, and now that allows you to be someone who can think more empathetically toward others. Yeah. Maybe that helps you grow and change in a way that you never knew. that you have allowed because of this platform, right?
Well, and we were just talking about how short life is, right? And like it's kind of humbling and a little discouraging almost all at the same time, that when someone passes, that's when and sometimes in the most tragic way, that's when your life is celebrated so much more. And so I feel like people, every time someone passes and they go to a funeral or whatever, and people always say, to try to celebrate people while they're still living and not while they're past. And so I think that's the takeaway that I've had from this podcast is really is kind of living every day, because you truly never know when it's, unfortunately, kind of, again, we're taking a morbid turn on this podcast, but you never know when it's your time to go.
Carpe diem.
Right.
Whoa, that didn't go well. Okay, too Southern. It's me. Carpe diem is what I meant to say. I said DM.
Right. Oh man.
Well, Grandma would be proud.
Right.
Marlene, did you hear that?
Oh man, that was good.
Wow,
that was good.
It's exciting.
Fantastic.
A little personality
it's the wine.
there.
We'll blame the wine.
Oh my gosh, I just can't even speak. So speaking of that, this is what I want to encourage. I know I know this is way more than what the podcast is, but once again, it's perspective, it's growth, it's excitement, it's the curiosity to learn more, to understand people better, and especially people that you may not know. You may not have ever had anything happen to you, so you don't realize how important life is. We were just talking about my accident, which is almost 3 years ago now. And welcome to the Heather Show. Here we go. And how, the skid marks were only not even a foot long. And that's how fast my life was changed. And you don't think about that. And of course, praise the Lord, I'm here, right? I did not die. People are not at a funeral for me. But everything like that, I hate that it takes something big.
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, I'm someone who's always been larger than life.
You?
But
really?
I know, shocker. But I think it's so important for people, especially if you have not. I'm so grateful if you have not experienced hardship. But let this be an opportunity for us to say, do not wait. Do not wait.
Right.
Choose joy. Choose to be kind. Choose to, if you are not in a career field that you love, change it.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if you're 83. Change it. Learn something new. Choose to be the person that, instead of looking at somebody and immediately making a frown or walking away, choose to engage. If your goal is to make someone's day brighter, I guarantee you will feel a million times better than they ever did.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying walk around the store and purposefully, and awkwardly, especially if you haven't done it, go with a friend. Come with me first. I'll teach you. And awkwardly be like, oh, I like your shoes. Like, they don't want to think you have a white van in the parking lot waiting for them. But I encourage you, it's always going to be better for you when you are choosing to uplift people, because that changes your mindset, changes how you are choosing to live your day, right? How many times when you wake up in the morning, you're like, I'm going to have a great day. How many times is your day bad after that? Very few, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's the mindset.
Now,
I'm not saying don't be sad if something bad happens. That is not what I'm saying. But you can help make it a reality, and you can definitely help lift other people up. We always talk about how you never know what someone else is going through, and you don't. So smile and hold doors open, and be kind and say hi. This is I feel like even in the South, some towns have steered away from that. I know the pandemic changed things for people, but choose to go out of your way. Choose to wait 5 seconds at the stop sign for the wheelchair to cross the road, especially if people are downtown. And if that was you who almost hit me, you
called out.
You, sir. I hope that you are doing very well and that your week goes really well. I really do. But just always being mindful. So what are some ways, let's give them action like you would give at the end of yours.
Love it.
What are some ways that we can celebrate life every day? Or celebrate each other?
Well, I think, and I was just thinking, and I've never really thought about it this way, but like, you don't have to have a podcast to make a difference or have a platform, right? You really don't. And so I think you can, your platform, right, can just be your little, your office mates, your cubicle mates. Those can be people who you can touch. And, again, tying it back to the true crime aspect of it, like that can be, you can, come to work, and if you're a true crime lover, like I am, you can come into work, and you can, show the picture of that, young girl who was like, I can't believe that this happened to her. You can share that with somebody, and, that, I promise you, if a family member of one of these unsolved, cases, if they knew that was happening, if someone did that, that would make their world, right? Because that's think about
one set of eyes, right?
One set of eyes, one set of ears, like, and if you think about, how we're talking about lived experiences, right? Like how traumatizing it must be. And again, I've never lived through this. I don't know if you ever lived through this. I hope no one ever has to live through this ever again, but like odds are it probably will. Think about like how traumatizing every single day it must feel to wake up and not know what happened to your loved one 100%.
And live in fear.
And so the best gift you can give to somebody like who's in that situation is simply just to do the absolute bare minimum to help share that case. So.
And that is so simple. Takes 2 seconds out of your day to say, do you know this? Hey, I'm gonna shoot this to you by text, share it.
Yeah. Send them the link to the episode, right?
Absolutely.
Or send them a picture of send them the news article. It doesn't have to be a Crime Over Wine episode, right? But it can be again, that's the world that I play in, and so that's what I'm going to talk about, right? And is that you can do the little things, send it text to your friend, and especially if you live in the region of the case we're talking about here, 100%. I mean, you should. And
if you know someone that lives there, that would be a no-brainer,
very good point.
right?
Right, absolutely.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
But be aware. Help make people aware. People don't know what they don't know, right?
Precisely.
And so that can definitely be a piece. And I would say another way is by doing the compliments. Roll down the window when someone's wearing a pretty dress.
Yeah.
My family hates when I do that. Might have done it last week. They're like, why do you do this? I'm like, because they had a pretty dress.
Yeah, right. They're going to feel good about themselves the rest of the day.
They are. Absolutely. Tell somebody when you like their haircut. Just noticing something that simple. The last time I told someone that, they said that their spouse hadn't noticed and it had been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so sweet. How much better do they feel that, oh my goodness, I haven't been noticed. Someone noticed and took the time to say something. That puts a pep in their step.
Oh, absolutely.
So compliment people. Don't make it weird, but make it fun.
Good. And you know what? I always feel like whenever I take a little bit of a risk on my outfit for the day, or try a little different color combination, that's when I always get the compliment.
It is.
And so,
and how many times did you step in the mirror and think so self-consciously like, this is me, but... Will this? Is it professional, or is it this, or
Yeah.
And you do it, and everyone loves it.
It makes my day whenever someone notices.
It's
and
me.
Says, yes, I like that.
Little. If people know me, they know this about me. I love my hair. The hair in the chair.
Yeah.
It's so cute. I don't wash my hair but once every 3 weeks, and I know some people are like, oh my gosh, that's gross. Nothing is living in it. I promise it's healthy. My hair is very thick and very long, and one day I'll have my hairdresser come on here and tell you that. That is correct. I'm not weird. But because of that, and you know what makes me the most upset is when I'm on day like 17, 18, I don't feel good. I know I probably am getting close to needing to wash it, and I refuse because it takes a long time.
It sure does.
And
you got a lot of hair.
I do. And I just don't want to, and especially in this situation too. So when someone compliments that, I find it very hard to take a compliment because I'm like, I didn't do anything. I pulled it down and brushed it, and you think it's cute. But it does. It's like, okay, it's that validation that people need. Everyone always needs that, whether you think you do or not. It always feels good to be noticed, and in a good way. And you don't know what they went through. What if they got fired? What if they lost somebody? What if their parent ran away? There are so many things that we don't know that a simple 5 words. Women, we do not have a limit to our word bank. You know that. Liam, you don't either. And so there's no reason we shouldn't. And if we take a moment, which I always like to do, to think about the joy that you feel when you make someone's day better, that they feel when you see that smile ear to ear because you have truly made their day, or the tear that falls down their cheek because they were noticed. How much better of a place would this world be in, even just in our community, if people went around telling people how great they were, how amazing you are?
Looks. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Would people not be excited?
Yeah. And you know what? I always think about, because again, I worked in retail and was a server in high school and college and all that stuff. And so I always think about like the people who were just like not nice to me, like even if they weren't rude, like just not nice. And so I always try to be like nice to everybody, like even if it's not like telling them how great their hair looks or how great their outfit looks, just being nice to people has to feel good, right? And like again, like just like giving yourself, like giving a little bit of your energy to them, like has to feels a little bit good.
Smile, hold the door open, wave, simple things, right?
Don't be a jerk.
It's very simple.
Yeah,
it's very simple. Yeah. And think about it when you want to confront someone. Some of you are very good at this. Some of you act a little bit too early, and I have been known to do both. But try to think about it. If you want to send an email, just read it one more time.
Yeah.
If you want to have a conversation, take a minute, sleep on it, make sure you have what you need to say.
Right.
Because so many times if we can just give us a few minutes to breathe, we take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
And now I'm not saying, we can't ever control how people receive things, their response. That is not what we're responsible for. But what we are responsible for is doing our due diligence and our best to act in a way that is choosing to be intentional with others and look out for their best interests, right? And I want to tie this back into crime. We just talked about how we're making people feel good. And as she was talking, Elle Woods said, happy people don't kill people, right?
So true. Yeah.
And so if we're being happy, maybe the police will thank us because there will be less crime.
Right, exactly.
Right?
There you go.
Someone needs a hug.
Problem solved. Yeah, absolutely.
There it is.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing.
Well, let me wrap up potentially, right? I'm assuming that's what we're going for here. And I will just say, Heather, your hair looks great.
Thank you! Day 7. Yeah. I'll take it. Woo! That is awesome. I do want to ask you, though, in closing, which it's, you are just a joy. You are the epitome of good. You are always kind. You are always friendly. I remember when we first met, and of course we had heard about each other. And first met to take pictures. And I remember Megan coming up to me, she was like, Liam's here and he listens to your podcast. I was like, no, he doesn't. And it was just, those are just the sweetest thing, but going around, you and I are both huggers, so that was just an instant thing for us. But it's neat to hear, you can hear the empathy in your podcast. You can hear that you're trying to make a difference, not because you're saying, I'm going to make a difference today, but because of what you're doing, because you are giving a platform for people to be heard that can't tell their story. They can't. And so you are doing your due diligence for them to get that out, to encourage people to share. And so if y'all have not had an opportunity, please go on any streaming platform. There we are. I need you to look up Crime Over Wine. It's an amazing, the way that you do it. And honestly, you can pick and choose. You don't even have to start at the beginning. There are so many to choose from. You've done so many episodes. And especially, are you doing anything special? Your 1 year is coming up. Are you doing anything special?
I am. I wish I could tell you about it, Heather.
Okay.
But I can't just yet. But yes, no, we have a lot of really exciting things happening in year 2 that I'm like, just get me like, again, just like chills just thinking about like the ways that we're gonna like actually like affect people's lives, right?
That's great.
And like impact people and advocate for people. Like we have a lot of really exciting things coming in year 2. Along with some things that will help elevate Crime Over Wine, which is always very exciting.
Awesome.
Right? And so including some like t-shirts and stuff. So we have some things, we have some things in the works that I'm very, very excited about that are going to again just help touch more people's lives and help tell more stories. Which is my whole thing, is I just want to be able to figure out a way to tell as many stories as possible using the platform that I have, because that's my whole thing, is that I really want to give myself as many platforms as possible, so that way I can give it out to other people and let them have it for a week, for an hour, for a day, for whatever it is. I want to be able to give them that, whatever I build, I want to give it out to the people.
Yes, and you never know who can help, and you have to do what you can to help it spread. Where can we find you on social media?
Yes. So you can find me on all the social media, except for TikTok. I refuse to do TikTok, but and exclusively because I don't understand it. No, Instagram on
that's our age.
Right. Instagram at Crime Over Wine, Facebook at Crime Over Wine, Twitter at Crime Over Wine, Threads at Crime Over Wine. You can also go and see all of our episodes at crimeoverwine.com, and you can find us anywhere where you get podcasts.
Very cool.
We drop episodes every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday, and we're every Thursday. Look at that, back to back. This is exciting.
Excellent. Every
I love
Wednesday,
that. And in true fashion, I want to know, what do you find most precious?
Oh man, and we had surprisingly, I don't know how this hasn't come up in the last hour.
Right.
But my dogs, I find the most precious. I don't know how I went through a whole episode without talking about my dogs, but I have the 2 best rescue dogs in the world. And again, if you listen to an episode, I talk about my dogs almost every single episode. I have to. But there's just something so special about bringing an animal from a very unfortunate situation, right? Like both my dogs were strays and got into shelters, and now they are the 2 most spoiled dogs in the world, which is exactly how it should be. And they are the reason I do everything that I do, frankly. And that has to be it, because the way that they look at me, that's the way that I and it really I saw something somewhere at some point, right, about why do dogs not live as long as humans do? Mm-hmm. It's because they figure out very much earlier than the rest of us that life is all about about living it to the absolute fullest potential, and so they don't have to live as long because they don't have as much to figure out as we do.
Right.
And so that's unfortunate.
So much smarter.
So much smarter than we are, right? But that's my most precious, because I love them so much.
Of course. So, now, when did you rescue them?
So I rescued Moira, who's my younger dog, Moira Rose.
Stop it! Of course it is.
Of course it is. She is about to turn 2, and I got her shortly after she was born, and then Forrest is about to turn 7 years old, and I got him when he was 1, and so he's been around for about 6 years.
Was that hard, the transition to get them together, or did they kind of click immediately?
Oh, they were BFFs immediately. But I honestly, I was more, I think, and because when you are nervous about something, but you can't tell if it's because of the way that other people are going to react, or if it's because of the way that you're going to react. Yeah. That's how I felt. I was like, what if they like each other better than they like me? But it's the 3 of us are
no,
3 peas in a pod. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So yeah, awesome. I mean, they have the best life in the world, or 2 lives in the world, as far as I'm concerned. So
of course they do.
So
I think that there's such a beautiful thing with rescued pets. Our cat and our dog are both rescue. Our reptiles are picked up at a thing. Mm-hmm. So kind of. We rescued them from being in a cage, right?
Sure.
So
sure.
There they are.
Yeah.
But Bear, he's our Dutch Shepherd. He is 2, and we got him 2 weeks before our Chase we had. He was dropped in my lap 3 days before I got engaged to my husband.
Oh wow!
So we had him for years and years and years. He was almost 15. Had been through. He was one of our princes, because you know me, right? So I did not have. You ready for this? During our wedding, which was called the Hendrickson Halooza, because that's what we do. And I walked down the aisle to a Cascada techno song, because that's who I am.
That's who you are.
That's who I am. My wedding cake was a different tier for every bridesmaid, which I didn't call them bridesmaid. They were my divas.
Oh,
and I had princes and divas. And
I wish I knew you at
that my goodness. It was amazing. And we got married at my Granny Gramps, who have since passed, at their farm. And it was just 14 acres of land. I always told them, since I was a little girl, I'm like, I'm going to get married here. And my granny was like, honey, it's okay if you change your mind. I was like, oh no, this is what I'm doing. And the second and Nick knew even before, we knew very, very early on in our relationship that was going to be it. I was like, that's where we're going. Everyone's going to have, and his family was all from Illinois, or most of them, the close ones. And we made that happen. And we even had some of his family from New England that came down, and it was such a special, as anyone else will tell you, it's super hot, but I was pretty. So let's focus on that. But it was absolutely perfect and absolutely me. And that's what the wedding should be, right?
Yeah.
Is a reflection of the bride.
Right.
And I love that. I loved, and there was so much joy in that.
Yeah.
But sweet little Chase, he had a tie on, and he walked down that aisle with my best friend's babies.
That is so sweet.
He was a Terrier Mutt, and anyway, Chase Kingsley, he was precious, and anyone that knows Chase knew how just amazing he was. And we knew he was coming, it was coming to an end, right? And we ended up rescuing Bear. I saw Bear on A Pawn of Prayer, which is a local rescue. Phenomenal.
Love
Judy's
them.
great.
Yes.
And I fell in love with him because we love Need to Breathe, and Bear is the lead singer, Bear Reinhardt. And he was a shepherd mix. My granny Gramps grew up with shepherds, and so we always had them. And it just, I can't tell you. I was like, Nick, I know you don't want a second dog. But I'm like, look at him.
Yes, yeah.
And he was okay with it. And it was just so, when things like that happen, you're like, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And he was so scared. He was only 3 months when we got him, but it was clearly, we both think that something happened, because if you ever put your hand even near his face, he would cower. And I'm like, you're so little. How did something already happen?
Right.
And it just makes you so sad. But 2 weeks later, we ended up having to put Chase down. And the fact that it worked out in the way that my kids didn't have to be as sad, not that they weren't affected, but because we had the new shiny puppy, right? And it was just a beautiful thing. And Finnick, our cat, who we had rescued, he was about 6 months old, my husband's work, he had never, y'all can roll your eyes because I know that this is not what you intended, but he had always had an old dog. So the only thing he could do is lay with Chase. Like, Chase was not playful. He was an alpha dog, so he didn't want to share the spotlight. And he was my best friend in my shadow. And so it took him a little bit after he passed to grieve and to go through that, and then to realize, oh my gosh, I have a best friend. So they are best friends, only a year apart. And it is so fun, but there's something so joyful and joyous about a puppy. All puppies are great, but especially ones that have been rescued, because you know that they've been through something, and they look at you with such gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it is the most joyful thing to come home, and you know that someone is going to be happy to see you, right?
Right. I know. I used to get so angry when my older dog, who's 80 pounds, would jump on me when I came home. But now I'm just like, you know what? I'm like, is anyone else jumping on me when I get home? No. And so therefore, so I should be a little more grateful for that. So.
And celebrate life. Go get a rescue. Shout out to A Pawn of Prayer.
They follow me around everywhere, and I love them. So
I love that. And what I'm constantly surprised at is how amazing it is. I used to, we brought up Michael Crosta. I used to tell him at the beginning, I really want to make this around what people find most precious. But I don't want everyone to say the same answers. Because, you think generally you're going to get family or whatever, boyfriend. Yeah. And I am just so delighted that is not what happens. Yeah. Because everyone is so different, that what you find most precious, and doesn't mean that is absolutely the most precious of all. No, today is, no. But today, this is what you are the most grateful for. And I think that's amazing that it changes, because so often we only focus on the few things, the family and the job and the house and the shelter, instead of saying, oh my gosh, thank you. I mean, I can't say this because my legs don't work, but thank you to be able to get around. Thank you that we have a car or transportation. Thank you for all of these, that we have grocery stores, that we're not having to walk 30 miles to get water out of a river, right? Just all of these things that we take for granted. And I don't mean to get like hippy dippy on y'all, but I think there's something so special in be looking for what you are most grateful for almost every day, because then you can wake up, and that's another challenge, right? I know we've given y'all a few challenges on how to celebrate life, and they're like, we've already written down enough, but
we're there.
be grateful. Be grateful, and be grateful if you have not been through something that your podcast specifies and shares. Be grateful you haven't been there, and be encouraging and understanding and willing to help those who have been through hardships that you don't understand. Because we can't understand.
It's just telling them that their hair looks great.
Exactly. Which you should do every time you see me. Awesome. Liam.
I do that all the time.
You're the best. Thank you so much. And y'all go check out Crime Over Wine. As always, have a wonderful week. I hope that you have been able to engage with us, and that something has encouraged you today. Choose to be kind. Choose to be grateful. Choose to encourage. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Heather's Most Precious. Bye, y'all.
Heather's Most Precious is brought to you with love by the Hendrickson Agency, an insurance agency serving all of Georgia and Tennessee. The Hendrickson Agency, properly protecting your most precious possessions. Support for Heather's Most Precious is provided by Study.com, which offers SAT and ACT study materials and even has resources for AP and college credit courses. Listeners of Heather's Most Precious get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level with offer code PRECIOUS. Just go to Study.com and use offer code PRECIOUS at checkout. Heather's Most Precious is produced by Chattanooga Podcast Studios and is part of the Podnooga Network. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of Heather's Most Precious.